They laughed at her, whispered behind her back. In their eyes, she was just the maid, invisible, insignificant, and certainly not worthy of stepping foot into their elite world. But fate has a strange way of turning the tables. When Alina married Alexander Blackwood, one of the most powerful billionaires in the country, the whispers turned to rage. They said she was a gold digger. They said it wouldn't last. What they didn't know was that Alina wasn't just in love, she had a plan. Inside the mansion's crystal-lit walls, secrets were buried under silk and champagne. And Alina, the woman they once mocked, saw everything. Every betrayal, every lie, every deal made in the dark. They thought they had power, but Alina had something stronger: patience. And the longer they underestimated her, the more dangerous she became. Tonight, she walks into the ballroom not as a maid, not even as a wife, but as a woman, ready to claim everything they tried to take from her. One by one, their masks will fall. One by one, their games will backfire. 'Cause what started as gossip around a poor girl's rise is about to end in a storm no one saw coming. Alina didn't grow up around chandeliers and tailored suits. She knew what it felt like to scrub marble floors while people walked past her like she didn't exist. Her mother was a housekeeper too. And Alina had learned early on that silence could be powerful, that listening could be even more dangerous than speaking. So while she served cocktails and cleared their empty glasses, she watched, she learned. And she remembered every name, every careless whisper, every shady deal discussed behind closed doors. Alexander was the only one who ever looked her in the eye. The media called it a scandal when he married her. His family called it a mistake. But Alina never flinched. Because she wasn't chasing a fairy tale, she was walking into the lion's den with her eyes wide open. She knew marrying into power meant she'd be tested. What they didn't know was she had nothing to lose and everything to uncover. The boardroom backstabbing, the quiet threats at dinner parties, the sudden accidents that always felt a little too planned. Alina saw it all. And when she started connecting the dots, she realized the truth ran deeper than she thought. But saying it out loud, that would come with a price. Alina quickly learned that in Alexander's world, trust was a luxury no one could afford. Behind every smile was a hidden agenda. His older sister, Veronica, never missed a chance to remind Alina she didn't belong. At family dinners, she'd ask pointed questions about Alina's past, her education, her intentions, never out loud, always coded in politeness. But the message was clear: you're not one of us. The other board members weren't any kinder. One by one, they tried to isolate her from Alexander, feeding him half-truths and twisted stories, hoping he'd eventually see her as a mistake they could quietly erase. But Alina stayed quiet and she kept watching. She started noticing strange inconsistencies in the financial reports. Names of shell companies tied back to people who publicly claimed loyalty to Alexander. She couldn't prove it yet, but she suspected someone inside the family was leaking information, positioning themselves to take control of the empire if Alexander ever stepped down. War was forced to, at the same time. Whispers from her old life began to surface. A journalist reached out, claiming he had evidence linking Veronica to a hidden offshore account. Alina didn't know who she could trust anymore. Every move she made had eyes on it. Every step forward felt like walking into a trap, but she had come too far to stop now. The gala at the Blackwood estate was more than just a celebration, it was a stage. Every key player in Alexander's world was there, dressed in black tie elegance, holding crystal glasses and secrets. Alina moved through the crowd like she belonged, but her heart was pounding. She had spent months piecing everything together: silent meetings with lawyers, late-night calls with whistleblowers, even planting traps in conversations to see who would twist her words. Tonight, it would all come to a head. Alexander had started to pull away. Subtle at first, missed dinners, short conversations, but lately he seemed cold, distant. Alina feared the lies were working, that someone had finally managed to turn him against her. And that someone, she was now sure, was Veronica. But what she didn't expect was how far Veronica was willing to go. Earlier that evening, Alina found a note slipped under her door. No name, just 4 words. He's not safe anymore. Her hands had trembled as she read it again and again. Someone wasn't just trying to ruin her. They were coming for Alexander too. And if Alina didn't act fast, everything would unravel. The lights in the ballroom dimmed slightly as the host tapped his glass. It was time. All eyes turned toward her dot as Alina stepped into the soft spotlight. The room fell into a hush. But before she could speak, the doors to the ballroom burst open. 2 men in dark suits walked in, their presence calm but heavy. One of them handed a sealed envelope to Alexander without a word. He opened it, glanced at the contents, and froze. The color drained from his face. Whatever was inside, it hit hard. Elena's eyes locked with his, searching for a clue, a signal, but he looked away. Whispers started to ripple through the crowd. Veronica rose from her seat with a slight smirk, almost too composed, as if she'd been waiting for this moment. Elena's breath caught. She had been so focused on protecting Alexander from Veronica, she hadn't considered there might be a larger game in play. The note, the false financial records. The subtle sabotage. It wasn't just about Alina. It was about removing both of them. And then came the second blow. One of the men turned to Alina and said quietly, "We need to speak to you. Privately, it concerns your name on the company's offshore accounts." Her heart dropped. Her name. The trap wasn't just closing around Alexander anymore. Now, it had her name written all over it. Alina followed the 2 men into a side room, her mind spinning. She knew she hadn't signed anything related to offshore accounts, but as they laid the documents before her, her signature stared back perfectly forged. She swallowed hard, keeping her voice steady. These aren't real. Someone planted this. One of the men gave a slight nod. We believe you. That's why we came tonight. Someone's been setting you up for months. We think we know who. At that moment, the ballroom doors opened again, but this time, it wasn't quiet. Gasps filled the air as Alexander stood before the crowd, holding a folder in his hands. Some of you have tried to destroy what I've built, he said. But the mistake you made was thinking my wife wouldn't notice. Veronica's face twisted, but before she could leave, security stepped in. The folder Alexander held contained evidence Alina had helped collect: recordings, documents, timelines. Veronica had forged Elena's name and funneled money through her identity to frame her and gain control of the company. It was all exposed now. As she was escorted out, Veronica turned one last time, whispering, "This isn't over." But the final twist came when Alexander turned to Alina and said, "I knew you were onto something, so I let them think we were falling apart." Alina blinked, stunned. He had played along just to see who would betray them. Alina stood beside Alexander as the last of the guests quietly left the ballroom, the tension finally giving way to calm. What had started as whispers and cold stares ended in a public reckoning. She had walked into their world as a maid and been mocked, doubted, and framed, but she walked out that night with her head high, her name cleared, and her place rightfully earned. The people who once looked down on her now looked at her with something different: respect and maybe a little fear. In the days that followed, the company's board was restructured. Alexander cut ties with those involved, and Alina took on a new role advising on internal ethics and transparency. She hadn't just uncovered betrayal, she helped reshape an empire. Rumors continued, as they always do, but Alina no longer cared. She had proven herself not by changing who she was, but by staying true to it. Her story spread online, inspiring countless others proof that no background defines your future. In a world of power games and polished lies, Alina showed that strength comes from the quietest places, and sometimes the girl they ignore becomes the woman they never see coming.